Hello and welcome to Steven University. This week we watched An Indirect Kiss, an episode in which Steven tells the story of Amethyst cracking her gem, which obviously affects her form. We've established in the past, of course, that the gem's physical forms, they don't exist like people do. Their physical forms are manifestations of light from the gem themselves. So the gem is cracked and Amethyst's physical form, literally falls apart. And it turns out that one of the many powers that Rose Quartz had was healing tears. Noticing a theme, of course, of protection with Rose's powers. Her weapon, for example, we've established, or at least the weapon that Steven's acquired from her, is a shield. So there's a nice little connection there. So Steven, hoping he is sort of retained her powers, spends much of the episode trying to cry to heal Amethyst's gem, but in the end they have to go to a place where there's a fountain of Rose's tears, which eventually they manage to repair. Amethyst is healed, and Steven feels very down because he feels like he'll never be included as one of the gems. It deals with a lot of themes about his inadequacy against his mother and feeling like he'll never quite live up to her. And how she's obviously seen and revered by the other gems, which is even more frustrating in that he doesn't even know her himself, so he can't even just go, yeah, she was just better than me, because he doesn't even know, and it's very frustrating for him, and very mixed up emotions about his mother. And then it turns out that he doesn't have the healing tears, which is disappointing, but he does have healing spit, and he manages to cure Connie of her need for glasses, which is followed by the brilliant line of, what am I going to tell my mum? What am I going to tell my optometrist? So, I like this one, but as always, Chris, fascinated. What are you thinking?
I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic.
Good.
I thought it was thoroughly enjoyable. I think if you're gonna nitpick, you could argue some of the Amethyst body falling apart stuff goes on a little too long. But that's truly nitpicking on what was otherwise a wonderful episode. I thought, really genuinely, I know it's not even because, I'd say if I thought it was a bit meh like I did last week, but I honestly thought this one was a real step too. And I think, I don't know if it's because it dealt with it more head on, but kind of last week I was saying, other than that moment, I didn't really get much of the mother stuff, but there was so much mum stuff in this episode, but it was just so nice. I loved them saying, well, actually you didn't heal it, we just unplugged it. I thought that was amusing but then heartbreaking, but at the same time also you're like, well, excuse me, long day. You're like, oh, well, maybe he did it. Maybe it was him. And then you get the reveal that no, it wasn't, but he can do something else. I liked all that stuff. I think it gets a bit grim when you're healing spit. That's a bit weird. I did get the fascinating experience of Jess coming into the room 30 seconds into the episode, and joining me for a quick hug and ending up watching all of it. And me going, so what did you think? And she was like, I don't know what the fuck that was. She just sheer confusion.
Gotcha.
Which is a joy to experience someone be on the other foot that I was on.
You're experiencing what people must enjoy out of listening to this podcast sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, only I was like, you gonna keep watching it? And she was like, no one's forcing me to. I was like, good call. It's good, fair, not good call, not watching it, but fair observation. And I was like, I could force you to watch it, and she was like, nah. So I was like, okay, that's the quicker version of this podcast. You want to keep watching it? Nah. That would have been one episode.
Yeah. And then next week, do you want to keep watching it? Still no.
Yeah. Be quicker though. Save us on the bandwidth charge. But yeah, I thought it was really, really great, and I love him telling. I love that you didn't need Connie. You could have just not had the episode be done through flashbacks. You could have just had that story unfold. But having Connie, seeing Steven and Connie, and just having that element was a really nice touch, I felt, to the whole thing.
Well, we haven't seen Connie in a little while, so for me, just to sort of throw it out, I think even if this episode had been a bit naff in the rest of it, it was just nice to see Connie, because it's just sort of nice to get a reminder that they are still friends and they still hang out, even though we haven't seen them since what, Lion 2, straight to DVD, whatever it was called, that one. The one where she did the tennis strokes to slash the sword through the air. So I enjoyed seeing her, full stop. But thankfully, she's not the only thing that's great about this episode, as you just pointed out. Like the how they deal with his feelings for his mum. You get a real. It's weird because they're bizarrely clear but bizarrely confused all at once. You understand exactly what he's feeling, and what he's feeling is confusion, and you know exactly what he's confused about, so it still feels really clean cut and very understandable. Does that make sense? There are shows when the characters, when they're trying to indicate that they're confused and they're conflicted, they can just come across like badly written characters, because the conflict doesn't feel earned. So it's just a character that thinks two things, and it ends up getting muddled, and you don't really know where the character lies. But with this, you understand exactly where Steven sits, which is there's this person that everyone else reveres, and it's all these expectations thrown onto him to be like her, but he knows full well that he's mostly the one putting those expectations on himself. At no point have the gems said. In fact, if you watch this episode a second time, as I just did, or maybe third, fourth, I don't know how many times I've seen the earlier parts of this show yet, but when you watch this episode multiple times, what becomes clear is he puts the pressure on himself very quickly. When the gems suggest the healing tears, they talk about going to the fountain. And every time he's desperately trying to make tears happen, they're like, no, don't worry about it. Like, we don't expect that of you. You know what I mean? Like, you are your own person. You're capable in your own way. You be you. We'll go find, something from Rose to solve that particular issue. Do you know what I mean? And that really hits home, because you're looking at this poor kid whose mum was essentially a god to these other gems. They revere her. They talk about her so fondly. He is technically her. He's replaced her on this earth, and he's put on himself the pressure of how to of what she could achieve and what she achieved, but he doesn't even know how she was. How can you even compare yourself to a person you didn't know? So he'll never feel as good as her, because he doesn't even know how good she was. It's like it's an unwinnable battle, and yet he's a child and he's dealing with all this. It's heartbreaking, really, when you think about it, because I don't know how old exactly he's supposed to be at this point in the series, but he's what, like 10 something? He's not an adult. These are complex feelings to be dealing with. So when he curls up in her arms in the statue, for those who don't remember the episode, when they reach the fountain, it's overgrown with these thorny things, but there's a statue of Rose around the fountain, inside the fountain, but it's dried up, and he sort of curls up in the fountain and sort of talks to her. And there's this great moment as well when he goes under the water, and he for a second thinks he sees the sort of shape of the fountain moving, like reaching out to him, but it isn't. It's just a statue. So it's really there's so much powerful stuff in this episode, and a lot of that. It's clearer than it's been previously in the show. I think they've done this one particularly really lends itself to making you understand where Steven stands without really being too shoving it in your face. It's actually done really subtly too. Considering how much complexity they've crammed into an 11-minute episode, you would expect every line of dialogue to be horrible, like, this is how I feel, I'm saying it out loud to make this fit within the confines of an 11-minute episode. But no, it's all done through... Go on, sorry, I've talked too much.
No, it's fine. It does seem a strange one, though, in the wider context to pair with last week's, because this is the two that they aired together, and they're both they deal with similar themes, and I don't know whether that's deliberate. I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know. It's so... Yeah, part of me was like, almost feels like we're ramping up towards some kind of season finale, and I know we're not just yet. We're about halfway through season 1, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, well, well, to tell you the truth, we are sort of, because I think when the season was designed, the next 2 episodes, which is sort of a 2-parter.
You said this.
Ocean Gem and Mirror Gem. I consider them to be the season 1 finale. Cartoon Network, however, it seems to me that they've flipped back and forth on how long a season of Steven Universe is. So it's either 26 or 52. So at the 26 point, meaning the next 2 episodes, 25 and 26, it does feel like a bit of a season finale,
okay.
As does 51 and 52. So, take from that what you will. The seasons are all a bit muddled. It gets more muddled in later seasons, where Cartoon Network would obviously told the production team that it was going to be a 52 episode season, and they designed it that way, and then cut it in the middle. So then randomly, like, the season finale doesn't feel much like a season finale at all. At least in this first season, it does. So yeah, it's weird. But forgetting that for a second, yeah, you're right. It does feel like it's ramping up, doesn't it? Because the last couple have really dealt with a little bit more mythology.
Yeah, mythology and kind of these deeper themes about who Stephen is. Yeah. Yeah, I did really, really impressed, and as enjoyable to watch, I think, as the Stevens one. And I think if you were comparing it to that one, what's funny is exactly that. There wasn't necessarily, it wasn't like laugh out loud, but I think that's what I mean by, I think sometimes in 11 minutes, we were talking last week about, maybe it only needs to do one thing. This episode, I don't think particularly does comedy, unless you find Amethyst's body breaking down particularly funny. I didn't, but I suppose I could see how someone would find all that kind of stuff.
I did. There were points I found that a little bit creepy, actually.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Interesting visuals. I think the best visuals are when the fountain comes to life. I think that's some fantastic animation. But it does the heart stuff and it does the character piece well. So as such, you go, yeah, good episode.
Awesome. What do we think to the way they handled Pearl in this episode? Because I find this episode weird from the perspective of they make Pearl a lot more. Her character shifts a little in this one. She's a little more panicky and erratic than she's usually. I mean, she is normally quite sort of. She's usually quite anal, but she's very prim and proper, and she wants everything by the book, and she wants to formulate a plan and all that stuff. But she's never seemed out of control. Whereas in this one, she's running around like a crazy person. I feel like some of that was for comic effect, but I worried watching this that it harmed her character a little bit. Was it worth the gags of her? Because it was funny to see her panicking, but I don't know if the damage you've done to her character is worth that. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, but I can see what you mean. But to me, it was her. The issue is slightly caused by a lack of organisation because there should have been a fence and there wasn't. So maybe she's feeling panic and annoyed about that. But I just viewed it as she, even though they fall out, she cares a lot and she cares for Amethyst, and it was panic that was making her act that way as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because it was a situation that she couldn't control.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So therefore she went into panic mode.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I also thought there was a sweet moment between Amethyst and Stephen when she's like, "Oh, you care about me," which I thought was very nicely done as well.
Also, there's, I agree with you, that moment was great, but also, I'm going to get real deep here, there's an element of unreliable narrator. So
in the very last scene, yes, yeah.
So it could be that well, for all of it, maybe it could be that Pearl wasn't actually that panicked, but to ramp up the tension and ramp up Stephen's guilt in his head as he's telling this story, as it happened, she was more panicked because that would, of course, make him feel. If she was quite calm, that would make him feel like it didn't really matter. But if you add her panic, it adds to his panic, and maybe that's why he was telling the story that way.
Yeah, that's a good point actually, because maybe she was a little panicked, but he perceived it. He assimilated, like maybe she was just normal level of Pearl concerned, and he sort of projected his own panic onto her in the retelling of the story, or maybe that's just how he remembers it. You're right, because the only really clear and obvious moment of it being unreliable narrator is the very last moment when Pearl's like, "And we hate you," and she doesn't say that. She says like something like, "You're useless, and you'll never find your powers," and all this stuff. But that's the other thing that breaks my heart about it, is like, in a weird way, if it was true that he didn't have any of Rose's powers, he'd be free of that responsibility. He could just go around be a normal 10-year-old boy. Yet, as confused as his feelings are about being able to live up to his mum, the idea of not being able to even join the Gems on their missions and stuff deeply upsets him also. So that poor kid is torn in like 10 different ways. like when he thinks that he might not have enough power to actually be a full crystal gem, like ever, he's really upset. Like he's, teary-eyed and like, just really like, and that's, and when you think about it in a weird way, that's so messed up because it would solve all of those other problems that we talked about. Because if he just considered himself human, he wouldn't have to live up to rose quartz. Do you know what I mean? And that's
yeah, definitely.
so that's it, yeah. There's so many dimensions to this episode and a lot going on, and surprisingly, again, no ham-fisting of any of it, which amazes me in 11 minutes. And this is really a sign of what the show learns to do very well going forward as well. I think, I feel like they have mastered the art of getting really well-balanced emotional stories with lots of complexity and genuinely consistent character conflicts. That really follow through. Like the character work on this show is basically second to none. I've said this in my why you should be watching Steven Universe video, which is on the YouTube channel. But there are hour-long dramas that would kill for this level of complexity, both in mythology and character, literally. And it's a 10-minute children's cartoon, and I say that slightly just sounding disparagingly, but I mean, if anything, it's all the more impressive that it's a show that airs on Cartoon Network alongside things like Uncle Grandpa, which is just, I think that's what it's called, which is just silliness for silliness' sake, basically.
But let's not be shitting on Uncle Grandpa.
Do you actually know what that show is, Chris?
Nah, no idea.
No idea. Good, because that's going to come up at some point.
What, on this show?
Yeah.
Okay. We're not going to do Uncle Grandpa University, are we?
No, I mean, I'll have to
do a crossover.
There's so I wasn't sure if I should say, but there is at some point an April Fool's Day non-canon crossover episode.
I think when you have to go to the effort of stating that a crossover episode is non-canon, just don't fucking bother with it.
We're gonna watch it.
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, because I'll be honest with you, and this is a bit of a preview review. For me, as silly as it is, and it's a very very divisive episode amongst fans, I laughed so much at this episode.
Okay.
At that one. So when we get to it, we'll get to it.
Okay. Cool.
Anywho,
well, there we go. Good, strong episode.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed this one. I felt worried after last week that we were going to be reverting back, but then again, I don't know if that's maybe better for the podcast. So I never know. I always feel conflicted when you don't like it because I'm like, yay for the podcast and the entertainment value of you just shitting on it. And then I think boo for just my own, like, because I think I take a lot. I really like this show and I get very protective about it. I see someone talking shit about it online, I get all riled up. Like, what you saying? That's exactly
I have like
what
a rule that you just gotta keep it honest. It can't be. It can't be forced either way by that situation. So I just have to give my feedback.
And I'll be honest with you, I think in a situation where a non-fan was watching it with me, if it was me, if I was in the situation you were just in, I'd have felt very self-conscious about the show. I'd have felt very that would have probably affected my opinion on it. I reckon a couple of the Doctor Who Christmas specials I've liked less because I've watched them with non-fans who have been like reacting badly to it, and it's influenced my viewing.
Oh, you mean watching it with Jess?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've been travelling back from, so I think we're just both tired. So she wasn't awake or with it enough to react, if you see what I mean.
So you just watched it as normal. She happened to be present.
Yeah. She just sort of, we just had a cuddle and watched it. She wasn't, there was no sort of either or. Some of the Amethyst stuff, she was like, what the... But I mean, that's not an incorrect reaction.
Yeah, that's not an incorrect reaction for someone who knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Cool. So sorry about that, guys. We had a boo-boo.
Yeah, sorry.
We were just about to close up the show, and Chris knocked over his mic in a way that stopped it recording. Well, that's how it. I mean, that's what Chris has said. What I'm hoping is that it didn't stop recording at some point earlier than that. We only noticed once he knocked it over. That's what I'm.
Yeah, no. It fell over. Yeah. No, I'm sure it's where it fell over.
Cool. Well, that's everything for this week. I mean, we've started recording and just to say goodbye, basically. But thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Always. You can catch us on like Twitter and stuff. At Nothing But Static on Twitter without the G. There's often posts about us on Reddit. Feel free to At some point, I think people keep saying we need to start a Discord. I don't know if that's a thing that we should do, because I don't know if that I don't think we have enough listeners to make that a thing, but I'll look at it. Facebook.com / nothing but static with the G that time. Nothing but static.co.uk. I'm at Dan Doolan. He's at C Billingham. It's youtube.co.uk / nothing but static UK or .com. Sorry, youtube.com / nothing but static UK. Either of those will work. That's everything.
Yeah.
For the
Sorry
week.
about the boo boo.
Sorry about the boo boo. I've been Dan Doolan.
You're not going to give hints? You started giving hints, haven't you?
Not really.
Have
No.
you not? Am I imagining that? I thought you gave hints last week.
Did I give you a hint last week? I don't think I did.
Oh, okay.
What would the hints have been?
Rose. I don't know. Good point. Yeah, I guess you haven't. Like, I'm just getting confused between this and Fringe Observers.
Yeah, on
I
our other
apologise.
podcast, Fringe Observers, which we talk about TV show called Fringe, I give Chris a hint at the end of every week for the next episode. But I think with Steven Universe, I quite like that. It's so often a surprise. Every episode is like with Fringe. You turn that episode on, and before a frame of it has run in front of your eyes, you're going, "All right, there's been some sort of murder, and it's a weird one, and they're investigating it. Probably." Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a certain route a Fringe episode will likely take. Steven Universe, like every time it starts, you just like, huh? Fuck knows. Amethyst's head might fall off this week. Like, Stephen, maybe he'll find a lion. Fair. Maybe he'll set the guy that runs in the local donut shop's mouth on fire. Maybe a guy called Onion will find a thing that makes little toys appear and make a mountain of them. Fuck knows. Bring it on, I guess. Like, it's the least predictable show on television. So I think hints would be a disservice to Steven Universe. I love the chaos.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I will tell you the title of next week's episode if that helps, though.
Yeah, that'll do.
There you go. So that's everything for this week. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you next week as we discuss Mirror Gem.
Ooh.